Hello there, it is Cassie. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today I am going to be making a birthday card using a lot of fun products. So to start off, I have a piece of Bristol smooth cardstock and I'm going to tape that down just using some post-it tape just so that I can make a mask. And I have some pumice stone distress oxide and I am sponging that on, sponging. I'm actually using the makeup brushes that I showed the other day. These are the Vivace, I pronounced them wrong the other day, but these are the Vivace makeup brushes, and these are, the price point's great and they work really nicely. I showed them in a video the other day. I will post that down below if that's something you're interested in watching, but I'm still loving them. So I did try to put that post-it tape right back over the top because I want to mask again, but I forget sometimes that distress oxide stays wet. So I heat that with my heat tool. And now I've got some squeezed lemonade distress oxide, and I'm using that same brush. I just cleaned it off with my micropore towel. They clean off so easily. And I started at the top with a sort of a heavy hand, and then I am just going to bring that down. And look at how beautifully that blends. And I wanted it to be very subtle on its way down, and it took no effort using these brushes. The next part I want to do is I'm going to use one of the smaller brushes, and I am going to use a stencil from my favorite things called Snow Flurry. And I'm going to tape it down because I will shift it if I don't. So I'm going to tape that down with a little bit of washi tape just to make sure that the stencil doesn't shift. And then I'll grab that worn lipstick, Distress Oxide, and then I'm going to subtly, and I don't need a lot, so I just subtly sponge. You notice I will not get any more ink onto my tool. And I'm going to bring that ink all the way down as far as I want, and it blended so subtly and so pretty. I just love how that background ended up turning out. Now I'm going to move on to stamping my image, and this is the Happy Birthday to You Pure Innocence image from My Favorite Things. And I have that in my Mini Misty, and I'm stamping that using some Memento Tuxedo Black ink onto some Express It cardstock. I feel like a broken record. Because these are my two favorite products to use while Copic coloring, which is just alcohol inks. And then I will just sort of walk you through my coloring process. I'm going to use the same skin tones that I typically use. I need to branch out a little more. But I started with E00, and I like to put a nice base coat down. I know some people like to go from darkest to lightest, but it doesn't work for me that well when I'm trying to blend the colors out. So I like to have a base coat down. And then I'll move on to my E02, putting in shadowing where I think it would be. And then I will go over the top of that in a small area using the E11. That's a little bit darker. That's my darkest tone. And then I'll go back over that with the E02 to blend that out a little better. And then once again, I will go over the top of that with the E00 to make sure everything is blended properly. Then I'm going to move on to her hair, and I'm going to use E84. This isn't a color that I typically use for hair, but I thought this would look good. And then I went over that with some E87, and I don't blend this out because I want it to be not harsh lines, but I want that to be a good differentiation in the colors. And for her dress and her shoes and her little hair ties, I'm using greens. So I start with G14. And then I only use one other color because it's not a large image, so I didn't need to grab three. I'm using YG09. I thought those would blend nicely as well. And then I'll blend that out again using the G14 and then go over in the dark areas once again with the YG09. I decide that I want to add some little rosy cheeks, so I use R20, and then I grab a jelly roll pen. This is by Sakura. And this is the white 05, just to put a few dots on her dress. And in the process, I'm thinking, oh, I forgot to grab colors out for the bow. And so, okay, don't laugh. My cat was sitting on top of my Copic box, so I couldn't get into my Copic box. Could I have moved him? Yes, but I didn't. So I end up using a Nouveau Aquaflow True Turquoise color, and I don't recommend, this is a watercolor brush, I don't recommend doing this over this kind of paper. This is not watercolor paper, but it ended up working out. It doesn't look pretty, but I know I'm a sucker for my cat. I just could not make him move. And then I went over the top of that with the Glitter Gloss Aqua Shimmer. At this point, I also have not realized that I did not zoom out my camera, so I stamped out the present onto some My favorite things, dots and stripes 6x6 paper, and then I trimmed that out because I wanted to do some paper piecing over that box, which is why I wasn't worried about scribbling outside the lines with that ribbon. And then I'll just glue that down, and then I will fussy cut around that whole image. So I apologize for not realizing that I hadn't zoomed the camera out, but I will eventually do that. And I'm just fussy cutting, leaving a little white border around the whole image here. For my sentiment, I grabbed that back panel that I had done all that sponging on, and I put my sentiment inside the Mini Misty, and I'm going to use some VersaFine Onyx Black ink. I wanted that to be very crisp over the top of that Distress Oxide, and that worked out really nicely. And so now I'm just going to cover that back panel using some Scotch foam tape. And then I also put it over the little girl in the present, and I will put that on my white card base, centering that as best as possible. And then I'll peel off the backing paper on the little girl in her present, and then I will try and center her as well. But then for a final bit of embellishment, I grabbed some Nouveau Jewel drops in the color Honeysuckle, and the difference with these is that these are a little bit transparent. They're not like the regular crystal drops. These are a little bit see-through. And once I'm done with that, that is going to finish off the card. So if you liked this video, I would appreciate if you hit the like button. If you haven't subscribed, please do so. And as always, guys, I do appreciate you stopping by.